Nominated seats now, please. Quietly, if we could. Well, fáilte roimh ar ais. Can I firstly call on the Government Chief Whip to move the business proposal for the remainder of the business today?
Thank you, Ceann Comhairle. It is proposed, notwithstanding anything in standing orders, that the proceedings on the motion for the approval by Dáil of the nomination of members of the Government shall, if not previously concluded, be brought to a conclusion after 1 hour and 42 minutes, and the following arrangements shall apply. The debate shall be confined to a single round, and the arrangements shall be as follows. The speech by the Taoiseach shall not exceed 10 minutes. Speeches by representatives of other government departments, parties, Sinn Féin, the Labour Party, Social Democrats, People Before Profit Solidarity, the Regional Group, the Rural Independent Group and the Independent Group shall not exceed 10 minutes per party or group. Contributions by non-aligned members shall not exceed 2 minutes, and members may share time, and on the conclusion of the proceedings on the motion, the Dáil shall adjourn until 2 p.m. tomorrow, whereupon the arrangements for the taking of business tomorrow and Thursday shall be determined by the House on a proposal by the Government Chief Whip.
Thank you. I take it that those arrangements are agreeable to everyone? Thank you. Sorry? Deputy McNamara?
Is there a particular reason that the Dáil adjourns to 2 tomorrow? Obviously, the Cabinet have to meet. I wish them the best of luck in the challenges that face them. But surely the Dáil business can continue without the Cabinet to supervise us.
Thank you, Deputy McGrath.
I wrote you this earlier last week. We're in the middle of a massive fodder and planting of our crops, which could lead to a huge food shortage later on in the year. And we're missing 2 weeks for Easter, a week for Paddy's Day. This business should be done last week, and now we're not sitting tomorrow until 2 p.m. People at home are watching this in a gasp. See your self-congratulatory carry on over there, and then come back tomorrow at 2 p.m. I totally oppose that.
And then Ella, favour of the proposal. Opposition Tá. Those against, Neil. Stonington, Kestrich. I believe the question is carried. Just vote all. Business proposal by the Government Chief Whip. Question is that the proposed arrangements for the remainder of the day be agreed to, and on that question the division has been challenged. Tellers Thaw, Minister Hildegard Naughton and Deputy Cormac Devlin, Neil, Deputy Matty McGrath and Deputy Michael Healy-Rae.
Deputy James Brown. Deputy Mary Butler. Deputy Thomas Byrne. Deputy Jackie Cahill. Deputy Derek Calleary. Deputy Jack Chambers. Deputy Niall Collins. Deputy Barry Cowan. Deputy Cahill Crowe. Deputy Cormac Devlin. Deputy Stephen Donnelly. Deputy Joe Flaherty. Deputy Sean Fleming. Deputy Norma Foley. Deputy Sean Haughey. Deputy John Lahart. Deputy James Lawless. Deputy Micheál Martin. Deputy Paul McAuliffe. Deputy Charlie McConalogue. Deputy Michael McGrath. Deputy John McGuinness. Deputy Andreas Moynihan. Deputy Michael Moynihan. Deputy Jennifer Monan O'Connor. Deputy Eamon O'Keefe. Deputy Dara O'Brien. Deputy Jim O'Callaghan. Deputy James O'Connor. Deputy Willie O'Dea. Deputy Christopher O'Sullivan. Deputy Pádraig O'Sullivan. Deputy Anne Rabbitt. Deputy Brendan Smith. Deputy Niamh Smith. Deputy Robert Troy. Deputy Colin Brophy. Deputy Richard Bruton. Deputy Colin Burke. Deputy Peter Burke. Deputy Kieran Cannon. Deputy Joe Carey. Deputy Jennifer Carroll McNeil. Deputy Simon Coveney. Deputy Michael Creed. Deputy Alan Dillon. Deputy Pascal Donoghue. Deputy Bernard Durkin. Deputy Damien English. Deputy Alan Farrell. Deputy Frankie Feehan. Deputy Charles Flanagan. Deputy Brendan Griffin. An Taoiseach. Deputy Martin Hayden. Deputy Emer Higgins. Deputy Heather Humphreys. Deputy Paul Keogh. Deputy Josepha Madigan. Deputy Helen McEntee. Deputy Joe McHugh. Deputy Hildegard Naughton. Deputy Kieran O'Donnell. Deputy Patrick O'Donovan. Deputy Fergus O'Dowd. Deputy John Paul Phelan. Deputy Neil Richmond. Deputy Michael Ring. Deputy David Stanton. Deputy Leo Varadkar. Deputy Patrick Costello. Deputy Francis Noel Duffy. Deputy Nessa Hurrigan. Deputy Brian Ledden. Deputy Catherine Martin. Deputy Stephen Matthews. Deputy Malcolm Noonan. Deputy Mark O'Cahisick. Deputy Joe O'Brien. Deputy Roderick O'Gorman. Deputy Eamon Ryan. Deputy Oisin Smith. Deputy Chris Andrews. Deputy John Brady. Deputy Martin Brown. Deputy Pat Buckley. Deputy Matt Carthy. Deputy Circa Clark. Deputy Rose Conway Walsh. Deputy Rada Cronin. Deputy Sean Crowe. Deputy David Cullinan. Deputy Pa Daly. Deputy Pierce Doherty. Deputy Paul Donnelly. Deputy Desi Ellis. Deputy Mairead Farrell. Deputy Kathleen Funshin. Deputy Thomas Gould. Deputy Johnny Quirk. Deputy Martin Kenny. Deputy Claire Curran. Deputy Pádraig McLaughlin, Deputy Mary Lou MacDonald, Deputy Denise Mitchell, Deputy Imelda Munster, Deputy Johnny Mythen, Deputy Owen O'Brien, Deputy Donnacha O'Leary, Deputy Rory O'Murcu, Deputy Angus O'Snuddick, Deputy Louise O'Reilly, Deputy Darren O'Rourke, Deputy Maurice Quinlivan, Deputy Patricia Ryan, Deputy Brian Stanley, Deputy Pauline Tully, Deputy Mark Ward, Deputy Ivana Bacik, Deputy Brenton Howland, Deputy Alan Kelly, Deputy Jed Nash, Deputy Aon O'Riordan, Deputy Sean Sherlock, Deputy Duncan Smith, Deputy Holly Kearns, Deputy Gary Gannon, Deputy Catherine Murphy, Deputy Keane O'Callaghan, Deputy Roisin Shortall, Deputy Jennifer Whitmore, Deputy Mick Barry, Deputy Richard Boyd Barrett, Deputy Gino Kenny, Deputy Paul Murphy, Deputy Breed Smith, Deputy Cathal Berry, Deputy Sean Canny, Deputy Peter Fitzpatrick, Deputy Noel Grealish, Deputy Michael Lowry, Deputy Verona Murphy, Deputy Dennis Naughton, Deputy Matt Shanahan, Deputy Peadar Tobin, Deputy Michael Collins, Deputy Danny Healy-Ray, Deputy Michael Healy-Ray, Deputy Matty McGrath, Deputy Carol Nolan, Deputy Richard O'Donoghue, Deputy Joan Collins, Deputy Catherine Connolly, Deputy Michael Fitzmaurice, Deputy Marion Harkin, Deputy Michael McNamara, Deputy Thomas Pringle, Deputy Mark McSherry, Deputy Violet Ann Wren.
Tá Octo Shop, Neil Shasta Shop, on Kesh Thritche. And I call on the Taoiseach, Deputy Simon Harris, to confirm his appointment by the President as Taoiseach and to move the motion. Taoiseach, you have 10 minutes.
I beg leave to announce for the information of the Dáil that I have informed the President that the Dáil has nominated me to be Taoiseach and that he has appointed me accordingly. This government will need to be both energetic and laser-focused on delivery, on housing, on health, on helping families, farmers, small business, on equality of opportunity for all and on empowering people with disabilities, on security and on exerting our influence in the world. With that in mind, I move that Dáil Éireann approve the nomination by the Taoiseach of the following deputies for appointment by the President to be members of the Government. As Taoiseach to the Departments of Foreign Affairs and Defence, Micheál Martin; to the Department of Environment, Climate, Communications and Transport, Deputy Eamon Ryan; to the Department of Finance, Deputy Michael McGrath; to the Department of Public Expenditure, NDP Delivery and Reform, Deputy Pascal Donoghue; to the Department of Education, Deputy Norma Foley; to the Department of Tourism, Culture, Arts, Gaeltacht, Sport and Media, Deputy Catherine Martin; to the Department of Housing, Local Government and Heritage, Deputy Darragh O'Brien; to the Department of Social Protection and the Department of Rural and Community Development, Deputy Heather Humphreys; to the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine, Deputy Charlie McConalogue; to the Department of Children, Equality, Disability, Integration and Youth, Deputy Roderick O'Gorman; to the Department of Health, Deputy Stephen Donnelly; to the Department of Justice, Deputy Helen McEntee; to the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Employment, Deputy Peter Burke; to the Department of Further and Higher Education, Research, Innovation and Science, Deputy Patrick O'Donovan. I propose to nominate Rossa Fanning, SC, for appointment by the President to be the Attorney General. I propose to nominate Deputy Hildegard Naughton as Minister of State in the Department of Taoiseach and as Government Chief Whip, and I also intend to appoint her as Minister of State with responsibility for special education and inclusion at the Department of Education. We've provided the biggest budget ever for this area. It is a priority area for me and one in which I want Deputy Naughton to work on with Minister Foley. I also propose to nominate the following to continue as Ministers of State in attendance at government meetings: Deputy Jack Chambers as Minister for International Road Transport and Logistics at the Department of Transport, as well as Minister of State for Postal Policy at the Department of Environment, Climate and Communications; Senator Pippa Hackett as Minister of State for Land Use and Biodiversity at the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine. I also propose to nominate Corla Deputy Jennifer Carroll McNeill as Minister of State at the Department of the Taoiseach and the Department of Foreign Affairs, with special responsibility for EU affairs, and as Minister of State at the Department of Defence. Our relationship with the European Union and our role within the EU is more important than ever at this time of geopolitical uncertainty, and I look forward to working with Deputy Carroll McNeill on these issues. Tomorrow, I will propose further deputies to serve as Ministers of State, and Cabinet will consider their appointment tomorrow. With these appointments, I believe we have a team with the right mix of experience and new talent to build the new social contract I talked about earlier, one which renews our promise as a republic to create equality of opportunity, to support those who need the state the most, to protect our hard-earned economic success, and to use its benefits to deliver tangible outcomes to society. First and foremost, this government is going to continue to elevate our level of ambition and urgency on housing, because we want to make sure young people see their future in Ireland. We're going to build more homes, and we're going to continue to drive home ownership. We're going to examine policies that are working, like the waiver of development levies, and working with colleagues to make sure such policies can remain in place. In Ceann Comhairle, over the past 8 years, there has been unprecedented investment in our health service. The budget has actually doubled. Outcomes have improved for many conditions, leading to people living longer and healthier lives. I had the privilege as Minister for Health to bring the Sláinte Care implementation plan to government. People are beginning to feel the benefits of Sláinte Care: free GP care for more people, the abolition of inpatient hospital charges, the extension of the free contraception scheme, and the introduction of the new consultant contract which Minister Donnelly has led on. This government will increase capacity and will improve access in our health service. This means opening more beds, more theatres, and recruiting more GPs, more hospital consultants, more nurses and more therapists. Mental health, I'm sure everybody in this House can agree, is one of the greatest challenges facing us as a society, and I'll work with colleagues to introduce the Mental Health Bill and to continue to reform our mental health services. Of course, an ability to do all of this is dependent on a thriving economy, and I believe in Deputies Donoghue and McGrath we have the experienced team to continue improving infrastructure and services for our people and to guard and mind our economy at these challenging international and geopolitical times. Implementation of the National Development Plan will be an essential driver of our ongoing economic success. I look forward to working with both ministers on the summary economic statement so that we can continue to convert our economic success to real and tangible benefits for our people. This government understands that it has been a horrendously difficult year for farmers owing to the weather. We'll help you get through this with Minister McConalogue, build on the fodder transport measures already announced today with practical supports. At Cancorla, I also know small businesses are hurting. I know there's an awful lot coming at them at once. I want Minister Peter Burke to bring his passion and drive to the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Employment. I want him to develop a number of practical measures which will ease the burden on small businesses in the near future. I've asked him to work with our local enterprise offices to ensure they're maximising their capacity to provide grants, to provide mentoring and training to small businesses in each county, because small businesses are the backbone of the Irish economy. We all know in this House that families continue to struggle with the cost of living. The government has taken a number of measures to assist in relation to that. This government will continue to help with the cost and the availability of childcare, and we as a government intend to fast-track legislation to include childminders in the National Childcare Scheme. I want Minister Heather Humphreys to extend hot school meals to more schools. I want her to make thousands more carers eligible to receive the carers allowance, and I want her to report back before the budget on means-tested payments for family carers. I've also asked Minister Humphreys to prioritise the auto-enrolment legislation, along with her work on options to address the impact of minimum wage increases on employers' PRSI contributions. I believe we can and we must continue to break down any barriers that exist to education. In my previous role, I'd worked tirelessly over the last number of years to try and cut the cost of accessing third-level education, because nothing should stop a person from reaching their full potential in this republic. I'm now tasking Minister Patrick O'Donovan with continuing to drive forward that work, and in particular to focus on developing new pathways for people into further and higher education. I've asked the Minister to prioritise labour force planning and the strategic development of the skills that we need both to deliver housing in the here and now and for our future economic success. I want him to continue increasing the number and the variety of apprenticeships, and I'm charging him with working with Minister McConalogue and delivering on my commitment to establish new vet schools in rural Ireland. At Cancorla, as you've heard me say, I intend to prioritise law and order, to work to make our streets safe and to end the scourge of antisocial behaviour in our communities. Minister Helen McEntee and I have had many great conversations on this in recent days and weeks. Garda recruitment is strongly recovering after the pandemic under her leadership, with 746 trainees entering Templemore. She has worked to negotiate the highest budget for the Gardaí ever, over 20% higher than when this government entered office for the first time in 2020. We've doubled the maximum sentence for assault causing harm to 10 years. We've increased the sentence for conspiracy to murder from 10 years to life. We've increased the sentence for assaulting a Garda or an emergency worker from 7 to 12 years. In reappointing Deputy McEntee as Minister for Justice, I'm working with her and tasking her to continue her momentum of delivering stronger, safer communities by continuing to fast-track legislation to give judges new powers to make sure heinous criminals serve long sentences before they can ever be considered for release, bring in body cameras and up-to-date technology to help...
Interruption, please.
Bring in body cameras and up-to-date technology to help Gardaí in carrying out their work. Expand prison capacity, Deputy McNamara. Bring forward new measures to increase penalties for knife crime and antisocial behaviour. Give the Criminal Assets Bureau more powers to strip criminals of their assets more quickly. And we will also work with our European partners to ensure a firm and fair migration system. This country is a welcoming country. This country knows the benefit of migration, but Irish people want to know that the system is firm, that the system is fair, and that the rules are working. As Taoiseach, I will also convene a Dublin City Centre task force to chart a path towards a safer and vibrant Dublin, because it's time to have pride again in our capital city. Tonight, as we hold our first cabinet meeting, this government will establish the Cabinet Committee on Children, Education and Disability. I am determined to put a focus on disability. It's about breaking down silos across government and making change happen more quickly. We are determined to bring new coherence and faster progress on solving the issues that matter most to people with disabilities, and I know that aim unites all three parties in government. I'm committed to building on the good work of the Child Poverty and Wellbeing Programme Office established by my predecessor, Deputy Leo Varadkar, and we will make more progress on that in the next budget. At Cancorla, the Irish state has a proud history of peacekeeping and making our mark in the world. We punch above our weight, and we have a responsibility to bring our influence to bear on global issues like migration, climate, international conflicts and human rights. We've built strong relationships with our European neighbours, and we'll continue to work in partnership to uphold our shared values and objectives. I'm proud of the shared partnership which has been built by the three parties in coalition since 2020. This government will be founded on that mutual respect, and together we will work day and night to fulfil the ambitious agenda we've set out in our programme for government. Now let's get to work.
Deputy Micheál Martin, please.
Gur mágad a ceann córa agus déanaí mé cogádaigh agus a rís leis an Taoiseach nua Simon Harris. Agus tá mé obair le Simon sa bhílte seo le ceithre bliana anuas agus mór chuid ibre le déanamh fós ag an go rialtas a seo go ceann bliana agus tá mé súil le leanúid ag obair le Simon agus Éimeann. Landfamid oring le hobar an rialtas seo ar bhatha le muintir na hÉirden. Agus an rud is táchtaí ná an clár rialtas a cholíne agus an dúlgas atá oring ná a cholíne agus a chur bhain. As I stated earlier during the debate on the nomination of the Taoiseach, based on the continued implementation of the programme for government, ratified overwhelmingly by our members, the Fianna Fáil party will be voting to support the Taoiseach's proposal to nominate members of the government. In addition to my previous comments relating to the resignation of Deputy Leo Varadkar, I would like to acknowledge the decision of Deputy Simon Coveney to leave government after 13 years of service. As a constituency colleague of mine representing another party, both Deputy Coveney and I have invested great energy and effort in battling each other over the years. I believe it has always been a fair rivalry, one which has also included a lot of cooperation on issues of importance to the people of Cork and to the great city of Cork, who we've had the great privilege of representing in Dáil. During the past 13 years, Deputy Coveney has held ministerial responsibility with honour and distinction, and I thank him for this service. I know that he has benefited from the wonderful support of his wife Ruth and his three daughters, and a close group of supporters who stood with him all of the way. Today, I cannot but remember the late Hugh Coveney, with whom I also worked well, and a constituency colleague. I have no doubt that he is looking down with great pride at the service and achievements of his son, Simon. I would also like to congratulate Deputies Patrick O'Donovan, Deputies Peter Burke on their nominations today. It is a wonderful day for them, their families and their supporters. I hope they enjoy the day and remember it, particularly at times when the ministerial workload means that there is less time for old pursuits. This government was formed at a particularly challenging moment in our country's history. In the heat and aggression of the opposition statements in recent weeks, the blinkered nature of their approach has become evident as they refuse to acknowledge anything positive. Their condemnation is so overwhelming and frankly so cartoonishly over the top that it's impossible to take it seriously. It reinforces the fact that the basic division in this House is between those who want to take issues seriously and those who just want to exploit them. We are in government not to keep things as they are, but to help our country to progress, to address the needs of both today and the years ahead, to be both honest and ambitious in serving our growing and diverse society. I know that the opposition tries to ignore the reality, but this government was formed at a very grave moment in the midst of a global pandemic. The largest public health crisis since independence was threatening us and the world as a whole. The fastest moving recession ever recorded had left 500,000 people out of work and thousands of businesses were in danger. By every objective independent measure, this government implemented policies which saved thousands of lives and livelihoods. We implemented a world-leading vaccine programme and secured one of the fastest economic recoveries in Europe. And frankly, we did this in the face of a profoundly cynical opposition which repeatedly called for measures which would have caused immense damage. And thankfully, we refused to listen to the demands of Sinn Féin and others for a zero-COVID policy or for the unnecessary retention of emergency interventions. The daily attempts to talk down our vaccine programme and attack every action told us more about their approach to politics than anything I've seen before or since. In area after area, we've been working in good faith to implement a credible programme of change. We do not and never have claimed to have solved every issue, but there is sustained progress. There are huge issues which still have to be overcome, particularly due to the impact of 2 pandemic years, but it is a record we can defend against any party in this House. There is not the time available now to go into every element of the government's work. I will, however, address a number of special priorities. My priorities as Minister for Foreign Affairs and Trade and Minister for Defence reflect the fact that these areas are more critical than ever to our country and to our values. The grave humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza and the desperate, overwhelming need to return some hope to this region will continue to be an urgent priority. I am realistic about the limits of what Ireland could reasonably expect it to achieve by itself, which is why I have placed so much effort into building effective cooperation with other countries. I have visited Gaza and the wider Middle East region over many years as Foreign Minister, twice this autumn. Since October the 7th, I visited Israel, the West Bank and key countries in the region. In Europe, I have engaged in ongoing and intensive discussions with other countries, and Ireland's position has been widely acknowledged and appreciated. I have said very directly and in person to the Israeli government that the shocking crimes of Hamas and the need to secure the release of the hostages cannot justify the scale and terrible humanitarian catastrophe of the war it is raging. I am in no doubt that war crimes have been committed, and I utterly condemn the ongoing bombardment of the Gazan people. I have ensured that we have worked on behalf of the victims of this terrible war, the hostages and the people of Gaza. With our excellent diplomatic officials and the clear support of the government as a whole, we secured the safe passage of many Irish citizens. We have defended the vital work of UNRWA, increased humanitarian aid, and I have indicated our decision to intervene in the ICJ case initiated by South Africa. I will continue this work and will miss no opportunity to promote Ireland's position. There are those here who believe that angry speeches and unilateral action is the answer to everything. But our approach of building international alliances through the hard work of direct diplomacy will achieve far more for the Palestinian people. For the past 6 months, I have maintained ongoing discussions with ministerial colleagues in other countries about how a joint formal recognition of a Palestinian statehood could be a catalyst to help the people of Gaza and the West Bank and in furthering an Arab-led peace initiative. We have agreed that the undermining of the Oslo Accords, and therefore the agreement to create 2 states, has reached a point where the Accords' approach of recognition after a final agreement is not credible or tenable any longer. I have discussed this with those in the region who are working on peace initiatives, and coordination with other countries continues intensively. We have discussed this between the government parties, and it is my intention to bring to government a formal proposal on recognition when these wider international discussions are complete. But be in no doubt, recognition of a Palestinian state will happen. With others, Ireland faces a very direct threat to the European Union from populist forces within and dictatorship on our borders. Ensuring that Ireland stands with European democracies is a core priority for me and the government. Our support for Ukraine's territorial integrity, its right to be a democracy and its right to a European future are fundamental to our agenda. This is of course made more difficult by the fact that we have 4 MEPs who attack Europe at every opportunity and present Ireland as one of the most Eurosceptical member states. Our commitment to the European Union must be clear and unequivocal. Membership of the Union, opposed by the main party opposite, has transformed this country, and we should elect MEPs who work to advance the Union, as opposed to those who continually seek to undermine it. The fact that the Northern Executive and Assembly are again functioning is a great relief to anyone who wants to see progress in Northern Ireland. Following yesterday's North-South Ministerial Council, we know there is a full agenda before us, and I am determined to push forward the work of the Shared Ireland Initiative. For the first time in our history, our government is making major long-term investment in deepening North-South understanding and economic and social development. And as we have seen during the past week, evidence-based research and investment is needed more than ever and must be encouraged, not undermined. Being Minister for Defence is a particular honour. At our toughest moments, Óglaigh na HÉireann stood against those who would have destroyed our democracy, and internationally they brought great honour to our country. In last year's consultative forum, the attempt to stop even a mild debate about the role of our defence forces and the security challenges facing our country was based on deliberate misrepresentations and an approach to our safety and security which amounts to people burying their heads in the sand. I believe the report which emerged from the forum represents a very positive and constructive contribution. We have put in place a major investment programme to modernise our defence forces, and we will continue to implement a range of improvements to pay and supports for personnel. As Minister for Finance, Deputy Michael McGrath has pursued an approach with his colleague, Minister Paschal O'Donoghue, which is both ambitious and sustainable. Overall, fiscal policy has delivered improvements in vital social supports, while also making sure that the funding will be there to maintain these services. The Future Ireland Fund, which is a major legislative item before the House in the coming weeks, represents a visionary effort to protect Ireland from the worst of inevitable economic cycles. Crucially, it ensures that once-off revenues will not be wasted and that we will have the investment necessary for transport, education, health and environmental infrastructure well into the future. While others talk about a just transition, we are actually providing a mechanism to deliver one. Deputy Dáil O'Brien has ensured a major increase in housing output in every aspect of housing provision. He has delivered a step change in the provision of new homes, which will continue to increase this year and permanently. In the face of loud opposition here, he has provided help to new buyers and begun a new era in social and affordable housing. Deputy Norma Foley will continue to deliver our programme of investment and reform in Irish schools. And it should be noted that at the time of the next election, there will be over 8,000 more teachers and 6,000 more special needs assistants working in our schools that were in place 5 years ago. And we can go on in terms of the historic introduction of free school books that are in place. And I know the opposition are not minded to hear a further articulation of the many, many achievements of this government. But could I conclude, Count Corlett, to say that we have a very comprehensive programme of work to do over the next 12 months, and we are determined collectively to achieve it.
Deputy Healy-Rae, could I say that one of the key issues, the most important issue we all need to consider here, is how we protect the natural world which is at threat. Yes, and the two go together. Last month, we just heard yesterday, was the warmest month in recorded history. As was February, as was January, as was December. The last 10 months in a row, it has never seen anything like, in any recorded history, the scale of climate change. The global, if I can explain, if I can
Minister, just a minute now. Can you behave yourselves, please, and be quiet? Minister, will you direct your remarks through the chair and don't provoke?
Apologies.
Don't provoke the deputies. No, well, it is. Can you please let the minister speak? Can you? You're going to get your chance to speak. Let the minister speak now, please. Minister.
Count Corlett, this is deadly serious. This is deadly serious because, as well as those monthly increases, global ocean temperatures have jumped completely beyond what the scientists expected. Average temperatures is over 1.5 degrees, and the best scientists tell us that when you go over 1.5 degrees, you risk crossing tipping points where it turns into runaway climate change that could not be stopped, that imperils us all. And we know this at home because it has been raining for the last 10 months in a way that it's never done before. And there's the uncertainty around what's happening. The uncertainty that we can have drought followed by flood is what's such concern. And why it's central to this government that we put that at the very centre of everything we do in government. Deputy Patrick, you were concerned earlier on, I think, that some of the comments of the new Taoiseach now about people speaking down to farmers might possibly refer to someone from the government side. That's impossible, because we're never going to do that. Because we actually have to listen and ask for help rather than telling people what to do. And the truth is, in the detailed surveys which we've done of Irish people, 85% of the Irish people understand this climate risk and want to see it addressed. Less than 5% are what we might be described as sceptics, and the truth is there's no difference between rural and urban, between young and old, between rich and poor, because it's an existential threat to all of us. The way we help our farmers is by the 1.3 billion agroforestry programme and other programmes which we've agreed already in government. The way we help is what we've been doing around the country. I've been to every single county, every single council, listening to what they think we can do. And in government, support that. In two weeks' time, I expect to bring a member to government which sets out, as I said earlier, how we develop a just transition And that came from the farming organisations, as well as the unions and the employers and the environmental NGOs and social justice organisations. In the next month, we will bring to government a new proposal to create a new bioeconomy around biomethane, which brings huge revenues into the farming community. In the next month, we will introduce new renewable supports that will allow the farming communities and business and others tap into the solar revolution that's taking place in a way that's already accelerated, but we're about to boost even further. They're the real things you can do in government. And it's not just about the farming community, although they're important, they're central because they're affected most at the moment, as we all know. But it's important that we care for all our people, and we have done that in this government with the energy credits we provide to care for people through the most difficult price rises. We in this government are going to continue with the tradition we've had. All 4 budgets to date have been socially progressive, demonstrable, approved and shown and so by ESRI, that the people in the lowest 3 deciles get the most benefit, those at the top the least. That's been a fundamental principle of every single budget we've done, as well as, I would have to say, Deputy Kearns, you were saying we have $6 billion for, you're looking for $6 billion for climate. We've agreed to put aside $14 billion for an infrastructure, climate and nature fund, because of good economic management, which is also caring for your people. But we've done more. We've halved the cost of public transport for those under 26. Halved the cost, and the numbers are shooting up. We've rural bus services taking off incredibly, particularly in Kerry, starting in Kerry. We have agreed only 2 weeks ago that the new measures we need to deliver in terms of active travel have to be decided. Concorda, if you stop the clock, sorry.
It's a wonderful cacophonous sound.
We have agreed a first principle in the other change in transport, which everything has to change because of the scale of the challenge, that it comes from the bottom up. It's the local authorities who will have to decide, and they're starting. Dublin City Council to change the city this summer, Dunleary doing the same, and I will be encouraging and looking in the local elections every single councillor to be clear. Where do they stand on this question of our day? Similarly, it wasn't just in the energy credits or transport fares. We halved the childcare fee costs in a way that was fundamentally supportive of young people trying to raise a family in this country, and expanded the likes of free contraception, and are delivering and will continue delivering for the next 11 months. The Minister of Finance reminded me it's not 10 on the Sláinte Care delivery, which is happening, which we can deliver in this next 11 months. Another caring act, which was hugely important, was the introduction of basic income for artists. And the funding, which we're about to expend again further in the coming weeks for sports grants, and as the former Taoiseach said, all the money went into the arts venues, and we're starting to do in the nighttime economy now. It's important. It's not just an economy we need, it's a society. And that comes with spending on the arts and on sports, as well as education and health. Now, I want to welcome the 3 new name ministers who mentioned today. Minister Peter Burke, can I say in enterprise, I think if you talk to your predecessor Simon and talk to your Secretary General, they will say this thing is for clear and certain and true, that the future economy has to be green, that the foreign direct investment, which raises so much of the taxes and other benefits for this country, is also equally going green, and will want and see a government that's heading in that direction, and we are. Next week, I will ask my department to talk to the opposition deputies from Waterford, Cork, Wexford, and we will set out a government-led plan, a designated maritime area plan, where we tap into the offshore wind that can provide us the fuels for sustainable aviation fuels, for our own fertilisers, and to power a digital industry that's zero carbon. That's where the enterprise sector economy is going, in my mind. Minister O'Donovan, I wish you the very best luck in a critical ministry, one that has actually been superbly led in the last 4 years. Again, I think if you talk to the Taoiseach now, where is the young people, where are the universities going? Talk to their Secretary-General. What he will confirm is that it's got to be green. That's centre stage in my mind in that department's strategy and philosophy. And if we keep going with that, we will have the young people on our side and be serving their interests. Last but not least, Jennifer McCarroll-MacNeill, I wish you the very best of luck in your new role in the Department of Foreign Affairs and in the Department of Defence. And can I back up what the Taoiseach has just said? Because one of the reasons we're strong, our voice is listened in the world, because we have been absolutely united as a government on some of these key issues of our time. Standing up, as you have today, Taoiseach, for the recognition of Palestine. Providing income critical at the moment for the International Criminal Court when the case had to be taken. Being the first out when others were withdrawing funding from UNRWA to increase our funding. The way you can have such strength and are listened to on the international stage is, firstly, we talk to that to our Green colleagues in other European governments and the rest of the world. Because people know it's based on certain values and a true, real intent to be multilateral, to be out there in the world, and to stand up for the rights of nations. That's what we're going to do for the next 11 months in government. And then go back to our people, and the biggest question I have to ask, if someone has it ready now, what the European Union is saying, what we need to do is a 90% reduction in emissions in 16 years' time. Well, I'd love to know, what are the plans of the other parties to go 90% emissions reduction, which is what we need to do to protect our people. It will be good for the economy, it will provide jobs and a future for young people. I can share that, my view on that tomorrow, no problem. But we need every party to agree that. Because it won't work if we divide on climate. Because in that way, our world burns. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Lou MacDonald.
Last Count Corla. Today, the name on the Taoiseach's office door changes for the third time in 4 years. But nothing has really changed for workers and families. I mean, how could it? This government was formed to block the change that people voted for in the last general election. Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and the Green Party clubbed together to ensure that the hopeful votes of so many for something new, for something different, were denied. People wanted a government of change, a government that puts them first, that's on their side. So you join together to preserve the status quo and deliver more of the same. Precisely, Deputy Martin, to keep things as they are. And over the last 4 years, you've delivered more of the same in spades. Simon Harris, the man that Fine Gael now attempts to cast as new, has been there every step of the way. His fingerprints all over the crises and problems that people face every day. And look no further than housing. We remain in the grip of an unprecedented housing crisis, a social emergency that touches every corner of life in Ireland. Last week, the Teachers' Union of Ireland met in Killarney. They polled their members and they found that over half of new teachers are considering leaving Ireland. I was in Birr, County Offaly last Thursday. I met a woman who told me about her 2 adult children, one a nurse, one a teacher, one in Australia, one in Dubai. Young people forced out by the lack of affordable housing, prevented from building a good life and a future here at home. And their story is not unique. It's the heartbreaking story that I hear told again and again. Fine Gael's 13 years in power have seen Ireland become no country for young people. Another generation looks to the airports and to the chance of a better life abroad. The housing crisis sees a hemorrhage of our young people, an exodus of skill and talent, another brain drain. This crisis now threatens our ability to put teachers in classrooms and nurses in hospital, and it is of your making. Workers and families forced to pay rip-off rent, home ownership a pipe dream for so many, 4,000 children growing up in emergency accommodation, all on your watch. Affordable, secure housing out of reach for a generation because this government is out of touch. You now say that you'll fix housing for once and for all. You want people to believe that you will do in 11 months what Fine Gael failed to do in 13 years. Taoiseach, people didn't come down in the last shower. They know this is just more spin and promises from a government that's big on announcements but falls very, very short on delivery. In the century-long history of this state, there have been 15 Taoiseach. We've had 3 in the last 4 years alone just to keep this charade on the road, even though the wheels have come off the wagon with Fine Gael TDs resigning left, right and centre. But I have to hand it to you. The soundbites and slogans have gone into overdrive in a brazen effort to paint this up as something new. Well, it's not. This government has been in office for 4 years. Simon Harris has been a senior minister for 8 years and Fine Gael have been in power for 13 years. This government is like the last guest at a party who's worn out their welcome but still won't go home. You've been in power too long and it's time to go. Because we need a new government with fresh ideas, with the right priorities and a determination to get things done. A government that puts fairness at the centre of its political vision and its policy decisions. Fairness for workers and families. Fairness for our young people. I want our young people to have the chance to build their future here in Ireland. I want our young people who live away to have the chance to come home. And I believe we have an absolute duty and responsibility to create that pathway home. The success of our economy, the cohesion of our society, the progress of our nation depends on young people having the opportunity to pursue happiness and to reach their ambitions here. So first and foremost, that means them being able to put an affordable roof over their heads. We need our nurses and doctors here. So government has to stop bragging, you need to get real, and you need to resource and deliver the working conditions and the health system that our people deserve. We need our teachers here. So give them full, fair contracts. Value those who shape the future through education. We need a modern childcare system. Professional early years educators and childcare workers must be recognised, respected and paid fairly. That's the bottom line. And government must end the insult of childcare workers signing on for social welfare during the summer. We need more childcare infrastructure, more childcare places and further cuts in childcare fees. And Les Ceann Comhairle, our communities must be safe. In this, your government has failed comprehensively. The party of law and order, my eye. Can I tell you, Taoiseach, no Dubliner needs you or your government to tell us to take pride in our city. As a matter of fact, you have a cheek to make that statement. I know well the inner city communities that I represent don't feel safe. They're scourged by antisocial behaviour, drug pushing and crime. Abandoned because the Garda resource is just spread too thin. And angry because Fine Gael has undermined and underfunded investment in community, in youth work, in community development, all of the initiatives that make a difference. You see, safe communities grow from the grassroots up. You don't get that though. So it's time for a government that will invest in community, in nurturing our amazing young people and in building opportunities for those too often left behind. Investing in community, by the way, is the smartest investment a government will ever make. And those that commit serious crime must face real consequences, the full weight of the law. Les Ceann Comhairle, our citizens with disabilities must live their lives as equals. with the services, supports and opportunities they're entitled to. You now say that you will ratify the protocol to the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Well, you've taken your time, so stop the dithering and delay. Get it done. Our carers likewise deserve respect. They do incredible work. They save the state billions. They deserve proper respite care, financial support and access to the services that those they care for need. And they need to see real delivery, real improvement on a day-to-day basis. Taoiseach, survivors of institutional abuse of the mother and baby homes also deserve recognition. And I want to raise with you again the West Bank orphanage in Greystones. A grave injustice has been done there. Survivors from the Bethany home in Rathgar. And this has been raised again and again with government after government. I now put it to you that you resolve this injustice, because that's what a decent government would do. Taoiseach, I also want to put it to you that you put your money where your mouth is on the issue of Palestine. The Israeli slaughter and war crimes in Gaza continue as we speak. They are broadcast live. And words are not enough. Condemnation's not enough. Action is needed. So recognition of the state of Palestine has to happen now. Why the delay? Why the equivocation? It's long past time that this was done. We also need to enact the Occupied Territories Bill. And if you're really truly repulsed, as you say, by the actions of Netanyahu, you will make all of this and more happen. Taoiseach, you talked about hope. But hope isn't generated by spin. Hope is generated by showing up for people, by following through, by delivering. 13 years of Fine Gael government has damaged the hope of a generation. So as you refuse to let go of power and limp on without direction, be very sure that change is coming. Ní rialtas nua é seo, tá sé an seanscéil céanna arís, a credan na níní fós I dabhachí níos fearr, credan siad fós gur féidir le fear ahrú a Harlú. For 4 years now, you've had it your own way. You circled the wagons to keep change out, but you are running out of road. The day is coming when you will have to face the verdict of the people. You will finally have to face a general election. So for ordinary people, Las Ceann Comhairle, I want to say this. I know it's hard, but hang on. Don't give up. Hold tightly to your hopes for a better future. Hold tightly to your hopes for yourself, your family, for Ireland. And then, when a general election is called, vote for hope, vote for change, and vote this failed government out.
Zanishik Bogaraigachi Parchi on Look Dibre Yakta Batchi.
Sharing time. On a personal level, I want to offer my congratulations and good wishes to the new Taoiseach and indeed the new ministers and the not so new ministers. It's a proud day for you and your families. But we do know that these are only temporary appointments with less than a year to go till a general election. Even in that short time, I'm sorry we haven't seen more women elevated to cabinet, I must say that. And Taoiseach, for all the talk of a laser focus, fitting when we hear from Star Wars and New Energy, it's hard to see how anything substantive will really change in the lifetime of this government. I do welcome the Taoiseach's announcement just now of recognition of the state of Palestine. That's very much welcome. And in the spirit of constructive and serious opposition, Taoiseach, I'm now proposing 5 areas where you could achieve real change, even within the next 10 or 11 months. First, on housing, the civil rights issue of this generation. As I said this morning, there are several radical changes you could implement now to end no-fault evictions, regulate short-term lets, transform the Land Development Agency and move to deliver the real level of need there, for the real level of need there, 50,000 new homes, 50,000 deep retrofits each year. Second, you could make radical change on disability rights. On Saturday, you said that the backlog in assessments of need has to be unblocked. We agree. Back in May 2023, we put forward a Labour Dáil motion on autism calling for action to tackle that backlog. In response, Minister Anne Rabbitte committed to ensuring that parents would be reimbursed for private assessments where the state had failed to provide these. In June 2023, I know, Taoiseach, you met with the amazing young autism advocate, Cara Darmody, whose family have worked so hard to ensure that children would get access to timely assessments. But we have not seen any real follow-up since. 16,000 children are still waiting. And yesterday, I spoke again with Cara's family. They are deeply frustrated by the lack of action, and they have important new information for you, Taoiseach. So I'm asking you now to take urgent action, to meet with Cara Darmody, to hear directly from her, and to fulfil that government commitment provided by Minister Rabbitte to ensure that no child should languish for months or years without an assessment. Thirdly, you could take meaningful action to address child poverty. When we last met to elect a Taoiseach, a mere 16 months ago, your predecessor outlined his commitment to tackle child poverty. Yet now we see nearly 60,000 children living in poverty and 4,000 children homeless. So your government should listen to Focus Ireland. You could enact our Labour bill to end child homelessness. Taoiseach, there's a fourth way you could make radical change for families, by tackling the cost of living for households and indeed by strengthening consumer rights, because people are still being fleeced with increased food and energy prices. And in Ireland, we have the most expensive electricity prices for households in the EU. If prices fell to the EU average, it would save households up to €700 a year. So I'm asking you to take up our Labour proposal to ensure this saving can be made for households, a just transition on climate change. Finally, Taoiseach, a fifth call. You should commit to lifting the recruitment embargo in the HSE and to passing a budget that properly funds our health service. You said earlier, this can be done. We need to see it happen this year in this budget. Before I finish, I have two specific asks for two new ministers. First, to the new Minister for Enterprise. We know that wages for far too many workers are too low. So I'm calling on you, Minister, don't give in to the business lobbyists who seek to undermine the gains that have been made for workers' rights. Instead, you should move to introduce a living wage, tackle the scourge of low pay, adopt our Labour bill on leave for early miscarriage, and not delay the introduction of the promised 7 days statutory sick leave. And you must transpose the EU directive on minimum wages, which would promote collective bargaining and ensure that workers have the right to organise, because that's how we see real and strong rights for workers. And finally, to the new Minister for Further and Higher Education, I hope you can address the shortcomings, if I may say, of your predecessor's time. In particular, you must ensure that apprentices are paid the minimum wage. And I did welcome, Taoiseach, your announcement, your reference to labour force planning, but we must see from that department a fully resourced plan to recruit and train up the construction workers we need, because that's again key to unlocking the housing crisis. Taoiseach, I was glad to hear you call yourself an optimist earlier. I'm an optimist too. And indeed, the measures and changes I've proposed to you are the sort of measures an optimist would wish to adopt in the short time available in the office of Taoiseach. So I hope you have the courage to take up these proposals, and we will certainly work constructively with you if you do.
Taoiseach,
I want to join with others in congratulating you on your elevation to the role of Taoiseach. It was refreshing earlier to hear the voices of infant children in the Dáil chamber, and I want to make a case for the appointment of Saoirse and Cillian as junior ministers tomorrow. Your family are understandably proud today, and we should all be reminded that abuse in politics travels to those who never sought public office. But Taoiseach, we are not here for ourselves, but for our communities and for the people of Ireland. In that regard, we have to be mindful of the serious work of politics that we need to undertake together. Government needs to accept and realise that the opposition are not the enemy, just as we realise that we can genuinely achieve things in cooperation. You have shown flashes in the past of being willing to work collaboratively, and I want to raise with you primarily issues of justice and education. So I ask you in all earnestness to dispense with the tired law and order rhetoric and assess honestly the issues that are affecting the Department of Justice today. You say the answer to prison overcrowding is more prison spaces. It isn't. It is less prisoners. How can it make sense that the progression unit in Mountjoy Prison is now threatened with closure? Can we get beyond the get tough nonsense and understand the link between poverty and imprisonment, and agree that 4-month sentences are pointless? Incarcerating people with addiction and/or mental health issues is counterproductive. We can work together on that. On drugs, Who will your new Minister for Drugs be? Will they use the Oireachtas Committee on the Citizens' Assembly findings to chart a new course in drugs policy in Ireland? Will you ensure the injecting facility in Dublin is opened this year? Will you decriminalise the drug user so they are empowered through medical intervention and counselling and not humiliated through the criminal justice system? Will you commit to legislating on this before an election? We can work together on that. On Dublin and your proposed task force, will you prioritise the introduction of a Dublin allowance to ensure that the capital city can recruit and retain school staff and Gardaí who are priced out of accommodation in Dublin? We have unprecedented numbers of guards resigning the force last year, 164, and the trend is continuing this year. Some schools in Dublin are operating on 45% staff capacity. Introduce a Dublin allowance akin to the London model. We can work together on that. On hate crime, face down the yesterday men on your backbenches. This is not a culture war over gender identity, as some would distort this debate to be. This is about a Croatian man, Josef Stok, who was beaten to death in an anti-immigrant attack last month. This is about the LGBTQ+ community who are afraid they will be beaten up or worse. This is about the 23 accommodation centres that have been destroyed by arson attacks in the last numbers of years. Ask your ex-ministers to tell those terrified families that this is some woke agenda. Stand by your convictions, Taoiseach. We can work together on that, even if others in the opposition cower away. On education, establish the Citizens' Assembly on education as promised. Drive the debate on special education, disadvantaged education, the separation of church and state in education, the ending of the Leaving Cert, promoting the ethos of inclusivity across our education system. Deliver on this programme for government commitment, and then deliver on the Assembly's findings. And separately, deliver on the DESH Plus proposal that would benefit 100 of our most acutely disadvantaged schools. We can work together on that. Taoiseach, give a choice to continue with the empty rhetoric on core Fine Gael values, law and order, low tax, employer rights over workers' rights, etc., etc. And you can pretend that your government are the only ones in these houses who are actually serious on policy delivery. Or you can accept that many of us here thirst for change, and that for us, difference we can make in so many lives is why we come here every day. Your time is short, but the opportunity is real. You are here for the people who will either benefit or be wounded by the choices you make. There are those of us who are willing to work together. This is as much a challenge to you as an invitation. Tá sé ná dit stop a cóir leis an gcaint, agus tús a cóir leis an nuair. Tá muid sásta comharba leat chun pulsathe déine a chur chun cín. Go magat.
Agus an isig bugger right, I cheapta Holly Cairns.
Gur magat las ceann Comhairle. I want to begin by congratulating you on becoming Taoiseach. It's a huge honour, and I know it's a very proud day for you and for your family and friends and supporters. I also want to acknowledge those who have been appointed and indeed reappointed to Cabinet, and wish you the very best in your respective portfolios. But I also have to ask, what are we really doing here today? We're reshuffling some of the personalities, but keeping all of the same old policies. This isn't change. The difference is barely discernible. Simon Harris tells us he has new energy, but there's little else that is new about this government. The third iteration of this cabinet has some new faces, but no new ideas, no new plans, and no new policies. In fact, we've just heard speech after speech from government benches defending the status quo. According to that side of the House, the government is doing an amazing job. One of the standout speeches from earlier today was when we heard the strongest defence of the Housing Minister's performance from the leader of the Green Party. Minister Ryan seems to view record house prices, record rents, more than 4,000 children growing up in emergency accommodation, and a complete collapse in home ownership as a job well done. Loyalty to the government is one thing, but this spin that everything is going to plan is, quite frankly, difficult to listen to. It's important to be clear about how we got here. Decades of failed policy have caused this crisis. Pointing this out isn't political point scoring. It's simply pointing out the blindingly obvious. That successive government plans have not and are not working. This government and previous governments have had endless opportunities to get housing right. People have waited long enough. Last year alone, 21,000 people left for Australia. Others are leaving for Canada, Dubai and elsewhere. Many don't want to go, but they feel they're being forced out because a lack of affordable housing means that their lives here are just literally on hold. The housing disaster didn't happen by accident or some sort of fluke. Political choices made by successive governments have resulted in the aspirations and the dreams of an entire generation being either diminished or completely destroyed. The people who got us into this mess, I don't believe, are the people who can get us out of it. You don't have to take my word for it. The record of successive Fine Gael governments for the past 13 years says it all. The wrong political choices got us into this crisis, but the right ones can get us out. That is why we need a change in government. Taoiseach, small independent businesses are really suffering. In rural areas in particular, it's one of the biggest issues that I'm dealing with at the moment. Small businesses like cafes and restaurants are the lifeblood of small towns and villages across the country. They provide employment, they provide social outlets, they help deal with rural isolation, and they keep our towns and villages alive. But many have closed and are at risk of closure because the costs of running a business have increased so much. Taoiseach, I honestly couldn't believe my eyes when I read the Irish Times yesterday that your answer to this was to dismantle workers' rights. Pausing the increase of statutory sick leave would be an insult to workers and to those businesses. Statutory sick pay schemes are well established across Europe, and the absence of one in Ireland for so long has left generations of workers vulnerable. Your position pits workers against small business owners. It is not the solution. We need targeted supports for small hospitality businesses under severe pressure that would provide instant and tangible relief. At the weekend, you said Fine Gael would introduce a package to support small businesses. That would be very welcome. When can we expect to see it and the detail of it? Because businesses, they're at risk of closing their doors, simply cannot wait any longer. Last Corla, I want to address Fine Gael's self-described status of the party of law and order. Fine Gael has now held the justice portfolio without interruption since 2011. 13 years later, and Garda numbers are down again this year, below 14,000 and nowhere near the 15,000 figure this government committed to. Prisons are dangerously overcrowded at 110% capacity, posing a serious threat to prisoners and to prison officers. And our capital city is in alarming decline, with antisocial behaviour, dereliction, littering and vandalism now the norm. I'm sure you can understand, given all that, why Fine Gael referring to themselves as the party of law and order just feels like spin. For 2 years now, my colleague, Deputy Gary Gannon, has been pleading with Fine Gael ministers to convene a multi-agency task force on safety in the city of Dublin, and nothing. Until last weekend, when the new Taoiseach announced that he was adopting Gary Gannon's suggestion. Taoiseach, I hope that for Dublin it will be more than a throwaway line in a conference speech. It must be followed by action. And the task force, can I ask you, who will be sitting on the task force? What resources will they have? What are the specific issues that will be tackled? And what are the timelines for delivery? Dublin is an amazing city, but it needs some help. We hope you'll provide it, and we'll work with you if you follow through on your promise. Taoiseach, for the remaining few months of this government, you will be Ireland's voice on a world stage. And there is nowhere where our voice is more important than on Gaza. Gaza has been turned into a hell on earth. Over 33,000 men, women and children have been killed, and famine is looming closer by the minute. Not content with targeting hospitals and innocent civilians, Israeli forces continue to target brave aid workers, doing everything they can to help the Palestinian people. The callous murder of 7 aid workers last week meant a withdrawal of World Central Kitchen from Gaza, where they had been feeding 500,000 people a day. Further limiting aid at a time when starving children are eating grass and weeds for nourishment. The level of malnutrition is so high now that Gaza urgently needs to be flooded with medical aid, workers to prevent famine and the starvation of thousands. But Israel will not allow it. Taoiseach, your words to date on Gaza have been strong. I'm asking you to match them with action, to do everything in your power to hold Israel accountable for their acts of genocide, to do everything in your power to hold our allies accountable for their complicity in this slaughter, because the silence from some has been deafening. I think it was really notable last week that it took the murder of 7 Western aid workers for some Western countries to notice. Nothing less than punitive economic and diplomatic sanctions, along with an immediate end to the supply of weapons to Israel by countries like the United States and Germany, is required. We have to be strong in pushing for action internationally and for taking whatever actions we can at home. I want to welcome what the Taoiseach said about recognising the State of Palestine. We'd like to know when, timelines, all of those things. It's a really, really welcome development. I was also really concerned to see that at the Fine Gael Ardèche at the weekend, you voted down a motion to enact the Occupied Territories Bill. Because as a sovereign state, there's only a few things available to us within our own power to do unilaterally. Recognise the State of Palestine, introduce the Occupied Territories Bill and the Illegal Israeli Settlement Divestment Bill. We could also remove the diplomatic status of the ambassador. But at times like this, we need to stand up and be counted, and I'm calling on you to do all of those things. Last Count Corla, outside of the political bubble, what difference is this repackaged cabinet going to make to the lives of people in this country? Will there be any change in approach on the key issues that we face as a country? That is the critical question. The truth is we have a new Taoiseach today, not because of the interests the country demanded, but because Fine Gael's election interests required one. That's just the reality. The former Taoiseach was clear that he felt the party's local and European candidates would fare better under a new leader. So here we are today. I genuinely wish that this was the catalyst for the change that we need, but after listening to the Cabinet, to the new Taoiseach and to the Taoiseach of the past hour, I don't hold out too much hope. To people out there who feel disillusioned at the lack of real change in the chamber today, I hope you won't have to wait much longer. I think time is running out for this government. I think real change is on the horizon. And my biggest call to you, Taoiseach, is to please do what you can in relation to all of the issues that I've raised in your short time in this role.
I think Bugger Ryan Ishkachi, people before profit solidarity. Dr. Breach-Smith.
But Taoiseach, as the youngest Taoiseach at the age of 37, good on you, you can afford your own home. That's a good thing for you, and it's a good thing for anybody who can. But what about the tens of thousands of people of your age group who can't, who are, like you acknowledge, forced into the box room of their parents, and now you say you're going to move heaven and earth to get them out of there and into their own home. But you have never once, in all the decade and plus that you've been in the Fine Gael party in government, voted against or spoken up against a single policy that has led us to the biggest housing catastrophe in the history of the state. Never once have you spoken against the policies that have put 4,000 children into homeless accommodation, migrants into tents on the streets, hundreds of thousands on waiting lists. We've never heard you say that. Why should we believe you that you're going to move heaven and earth now when your policies have been inconsistent with what's gone on in terms of the housing crisis? To Micheál Martin and to Leo Varadkar, I really want to challenge them on their repeated warnings about geopolitical uncertainty coming our way and why they keep using the expression that Ireland has its head buried in the sand. Well, we know why they keep using it, because they want to get rid of our neutrality. Micheál Martin wants to put a bill before the Dáil instead of a referendum before the people to get rid of Irish neutrality. And he does so because this government and all of its all of its moving parts, are right behind all of the warmongering of the European Union, and the warmongering that the European Union repeatedly call out because they want to see, they want to ratchet up what is happening in terms of the conflict with Russia. They want to see us move into arrangements with the EU army and with NATO. And we want to say, no, you're not going to drag us into war or into ditching our neutrality. And to that end, I challenge you, Taoiseach, to call a referendum on neutrality rather than putting a bill before this House. To say to the people who will be in Shannon Airport on Sunday, protesting against the increased movement of US troops going through this country out to the Middle East, to say to the people in Palestine and elsewhere that Ireland will stand firm on its commitment to anti-colonial legacy and policies, and we will not be dragged into an EU army or into PESCO or into NATO to engage in wars that ultimately, should they happen, will not see the sons and daughters of rich people die in those wars. It'll be the working class, the poor and those at the bottom of society whose kids will die in those wars across Europe. Finally, I'd like to challenge you, given your fine words at your Ardèche on Palestine, to make a commitment that you will expel the Israeli ambassador. Because words are all very fine. I use them all the time. I make speeches all the time. But at the end of the day, it's deeds that matter, and you can perform the deed.
Thanks. Ask Corla. Yes. Taoiseach, on Saturday, together with residents and housing activists, I was outside a home, or a house, in Swiftbrook in Tallaght. It would make a fine home for a family, but instead it has been vacant for 10 years. It is owned by Pepper Finance, a vulture fund that is notorious for hiking up interest rates on mortgage holders. But it's been sitting empty for 10 years. It is one of more than 50,000 homes across the state that have been vacant for 6 years or more. One of more than 1,500 vacant homes in Dublin 24. And someone asked me a very simple question. They asked, why are there so many vacant homes when there's over 4,000 children sleeping in emergency accommodation? Why? And the answer I gave them is also very, very simple. The answer is the reason is because this government represents those who own multiple properties, not those who own none. And that's the central truth of politics, which is attempted to be covered up all the time. That we have a government that is not striving to house everybody, to address the health crisis, to address the climate crisis. No. We have a government that represents those who profit and benefit from the housing crisis. A government that represents those who profit from the health crisis. A government that represents those responsible for the climate and biodiversity crisis, not representing those who are affected by all of those crises. And for all of the talk of new energy, there is going to be no change with Simon Harris on that fundamental. The talk of going back to basics for Fine Gael, what does that mean? It means rhetorical commitment to law and order, which, if passed into action, means abandoning the rhetorical commitment to a public health approach to drugs. It means tax cuts for businesses, cuts to the lowest rates of employers' PRSI in the whole of the European Union. You're going to cut it. It means extending relief for developers on development levies. For developers, giving them another break. And what does it mean for workers? It means the promised sick days are threatened to be taken away from them. On climate action, Eamon Ryan gives it away when he says we're only warming up. There's a tragic truth to that about the whole world. We're heading to absolute disaster. Our eyes are wide open. And you're in government with a man who made a speech to his Ardèche promising that he would fight for the right of big dairy farmers to pollute our rivers. A government that is committed to expanding data centres with no problem about the water, no problem about the electricity, no problem about the direct burning of the gas. And unfortunately, with the help of some so-called independents, the government gets a stay of execution. You avoid a general election, but you cannot avoid a local and European election in 8.5 weeks' time. And this will be people's opportunity to serve an eviction notice on this government, to kick you out of the councils, to kick you out of the European Parliament, and hopefully kick out the European Commission President that you support, a supporter of genocide, Ursula von der Leyen, from her position. But also to serve notice on this government that fundamental change needs to be coming. But I want to send a warning to people, because there's a lesson to be learned from what happened here today. This government only got such a substantial margin of victory for Simon Harris because of the support of a whole load of so-called independents. Most of these independents started their political career in Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael and fell out with them. Their highest political ambition is to be a minister in a Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael-led government. That's the truth. The independents who will stand in local elections across much of the country are much of the same. Key question for every single candidate and party: will you commit not to prop up Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael? Will you commit to give a fundamental alternative after the next election?
Ceann Comhairle, I want to correct the record of the Dáil. Earlier today I mistakenly said that the shortest lived Taoiseach in the history of the state was John Bruton at 924 days, when actually it was Micheál Martin at 904 days. Maybe it just seemed longer. A couple of weeks ago, Deputy Michael Ring made the comment that Fine Gael has been too left for too long. If Michael decides to join his 11 Fine Gael colleagues and exit politics at the next election, he might make a good alternative career in stand-up comedy. But a more right-wing stance on immigration, on law and order, on climate might have consequences the Deputy hasn't considered. Isaac Newton once said, "For every action in nature, there is an equal and opposite reaction." Society is not becoming more right-wing, it is becoming more polarised. And a shift to the right in government policy could trigger a surge on the left, perhaps in the form of activism from young people in particular. To the best of my knowledge, there was no such thing as an Oireachtas Friends of South Africa group in the 1980s. But an Oireachtas Friends of Israel group was revived in February of 2022, apparently. The same month that an Amnesty International report concluded that Israel is an apartheid state. Question: should the Deputy that revived that group be the new European Affairs Minister? Ireland and Spain have requested an urgent review of the EU-Israel trade agreement in the light of the assault on Gaza, a review which could potentially cost Israeli big business tens of billions of euro. Is Deputy Carol McNeill of the Oireachtas Friends of Israel group in a position to vigorously pursue that review? That's a question. Question for Minister Burke. I'll conclude on this. There have been a raft of stories appearing in the press linking a package of supports for small business with hints that planned improvements to workers' pay and conditions might be put on the long finger. Introduction of the living wage, put back a year, sick leave entitlements not increased next year, etc. I would say, Minister, do not go down that road, because if you do, there will be opposition and quite possibly a storm of opposition. It's the lowest paid workers in the country who need the living wage. It's the lowest paid who go into work when they are sick because they cannot afford to take a sick day. I would like to hear the Minister ruling that out as an option.
8 parliamentary friendship groups. Not any one of them was established as a result of any one individual member. So it is unfair, I have to say, to target any member as being responsible for the establishment of a particular friendship group. We move to the regional group, where Deputy Dennis Naughton proposes to chair with Deputy Matt Shanahan.
Ceann Comhairle. Taoiseach, congratulations to you on your elevation and to your new front bench members, and I wish you all the best in your new roles. Taoiseach, we've heard many times over the past 2 weeks of the soul-searching and renewal that your party is presently engaged in. I wish every good luck to your new ministerial lineup. I say that sincerely, as their success in bringing new direction and management to their respective portfolios can, only one hopes, benefit our national population. I do want to remind you, Taoiseach, of some of the touchstones which you yourself have mentioned have been to the core of your party's values. The idea that your party is a party of enterprise, a party that runs a tight ship, that offers thrifty governance to produce a more flexible, competitive economy, an economy that can offer opportunity but which also recognises the value of work and the value of the worker. I'm not going to provide a dissertation here on whether I believe your party has, in these last 4 years, delivered on these ideals. But as you reshape your party and government, I encourage you to give concentrated effort to the following points I would make as an elected representative and as a tax-paying citizen of this republic. Firstly, value for money. Government has spent so much money to get so little value, unfortunately, and it is unrealistic now, Taoiseach, I would say, to foist another children's hospital type project on the country and the Irish people when the cost is unknown and it is vast. I am referring to Dublin Metro. At $4 billion, it is good value. At somewhere in the neighbourhood of 10 to 35 billion, it is insane. I would ask you to get control of capital spending, competitiveness and robustness in public spending. The public spending code is a complex recipe to allow the taxpayer to be mugged generally. We need to simplify it and make transparent the spending code objectives and delivery thresholds. I would ask you too to look at renewing competitiveness in our economy. Government has done little to nothing to make banking and insurance more competitive. Customers, banking and individuals have no choice at present. The margins and profits being earned in these sectors are now almost at supernormal levels. Reform of insurances banking has not travelled yet the distance it needs to, and failure to regulate or allow competition into the sector, into both of these sectors, is a significant issue. We have some of the highest costs, Taoiseach, and I'd ask you to take a look at this. I'd also ask you to look at the challenge that bureaucracy is taking on the quality of citizens' lives. Individually, every bit of regulation probably has some sense, but in aggregate, they produce abject misery. Think of getting an NCT, a driver's licence. These are painful experiences. Or try calling the RTB, or comparison shop for health insurance, or electricity rates, or getting an SEAI grant. Surely these things should not be as difficult as they are, but you need to have your wits about you to deal with our services. And I would say to Taoiseach, try building a house in Ireland presently. We have major issues developing within the planning code, and it is going to require a whole of governance, and I would say a whole of Dáil response. I would ask you just to consider these 4 implementations, Taoiseach. Pay policy, I've raised this a number of times, to allow ISME as a representative on the Labour Employer Economic Forum. The recent rounds of pay awards did not fully understand the effects on the small business viability. Introduce VAT 9, even if you have to profile it for some businesses and not give it to others. It needs to be done for the smaller food and service sector. I would ask you to consider developing a new SME government agency, similar to Enterprise Ireland and IDA. And again, as I said to you earlier, to provide agricultural supports for our farmers who are facing extreme fodder crisis.
Taoiseach, first of all, can I congratulate you on your election. It is a huge honour for you and for your family. And it's scary to think that over 2 decades ago I did a public meeting for a young man out in Greystones when I was the Fine Gael spokesperson on transport. I actually did it for another young man on the north inner city of Dublin as well, who happens to be here in the House, Pascal Donoghue as well. And both of you have come a very long way since then. And I want to congratulate you on your appointment as Taoiseach. Can I also take this opportunity to wish Leo Varadkar and Simon Coveney well? I've worked with both of them in opposition, on the Fine Gael front bench and in government. And I want to thank them for the public service that they have given to this country. In particular, I believe their commitment and dedication to addressing the challenges faced by this country as a result of Brexit will be the most significant legacy that they have, and I want to thank them more sincerely for their efforts in relation to that. I also want to take the opportunity to congratulate my neighbour across the river, Peter Burke, and down the river, Minister Patrick O'Donovan, who I worked with very closely on the issue of Lough Functionagh. It's a great personal honour for both of you. It's a great political honour to serve in government, and I wish both of you well in your new roles. And while I'm on that topic of Lough Functionagh, as you know, Taoiseach, last week, when I spoke to you, I highlighted the anxiety faced by the communities around Lough Functionagh and South Roscommon with the increased water levels that they are facing and the increased risk of flooding. And can I tell you, Taoiseach, since that conversation last week, overnight, another 2 family homes have had pumps installed to actually stop those homes from flooding in another village in the vicinity of Lough Functionagh. And we are now in a critical situation in relation to this. And several homes are only keeping the water out due to temporary measures such as sandbags and round-the-clock pumping. And in fact, Deputy Fitzmaurice and myself were at a public meeting, or at a meeting last night with the residents, where we were told where the pump failed for 1.5 hour, the water was at the doorstep of one of those families. That's how critical this situation is at the moment. And I want to commend Roscommon County Council and Minister Patrick O'Donovan and the team in the Office of Public Works for the efforts that they are making to defend those properties. But the difficulty is that defence cannot continue for another 12 months. The water levels in Lough Functionagh at the moment have reached an unprecedented high level, surpassing the previous records of 2016 and 2021. And Roscommon County Council are telling me that the Geological Survey of Ireland predictions have flagged this particular alarming trend, a trend that they now believe will continue year on year and so shows no signs of reversing whatsoever. And Roscommon County Council have stated in black and white in a note that I've presented to you, Taoiseach, that without intervention it's anticipated that 4 homes will be permanently lost over next winter unless emergency legislation is brought through this House to allow for immediate and a temporary solution to implement the controlled removal of water from Lough Functionagh into the River Shannon. And it is critically important that that emergency legislation is brought through this House before the summer recess. And Taoiseach, I hope that you will ensure that that's delivered along with Minister Ryan and with the Taoiseach, Minister Martin. It is critically important that we get that action before those 4 homes are lost. Taoiseach, I want to raise one other issue with you, and that is the issue of long COVID. I have here an email from a member of staff within the Health Service Executive. Her illness benefit will cease on the 1st of July next. And even though she is out for a considerable period of time with long COVID, her colleagues who are out longer are still on full pay, but she is now going to have to apply for disability allowance from the 1st of July of this year for having gone in and worked at the front line through the most difficult times that we have had in this country and the most difficult challenges that we have had in our health service. And it is imperative that we do not turn our backs on the frontline health workers in this country who are experiencing long COVID. And on that issue of long COVID, Taoiseach, can I raise with you an issue regarding the need to revise the model of care for long COVID in this country. The interim model of care was launched in September 2021 and it was an interim measure. Now we've had a HICWA report since, we've had a review of the model of care by HICWA since that. We have an epidemiological survey which is about to be completed by the HSE, but it will be January 2025 before we will see any change to the interim model of care, and that is insufficient to deal with the challenges and needs of patients that are struggling with long COVID at the moment, and I would urge you to intervene in relation to this matter also. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Naughton. Sadly, I understand you propose to leave the House after the next election. I think, given your work with our new Taoiseach and with our Minister Donoghue, that there could be a very bright future in store for you as a political mentor into the future. But time will tell. We move now to the Rural Independent Group, where Deputy Carl Nolan is leading off and sharing with her colleagues.
Taoiseach and Ministers old and new, I want to acknowledge at the outset that today is a very important day for you all, and I certainly wish you well in your new portfolios and in the future. Taoiseach, I want to also acknowledge your role as Minister for Higher Education and commend you for the work that you did in terms of apprenticeships. I know we mightn't agree on very many issues, but I do want to acknowledge that the focus you put on apprenticeships and traineeships was very, very welcome, and indeed was something that stood out for me in the Higher Education Committee. I do hope that that focus continues, because we have a serious gap in terms of the lack of trades, and we need to address it. So I would hope, certainly, and would be prepared to work with any minister in that portfolio. The business of government is an incredibly serious profession. It calls for a dedication that is absolutely committed to the public interest and not the subordination of optics, party infighting and political positioning. I hear plenty of rhetoric about the public interest, about stability and commitment to the programme for government. But the cold hard facts remain that what we see here today is less about new energy and more about recycled energy. You have taken the resources of some people, mixed them with others, and the result is a product that looks exactly the same. And based on precedent, I don't see much in this government capable of delivering the radical and transformative return or change to a vision of a national sovereignty that is connected to the people and that listens to the people. There is a massive gap there. I want to see a government, as the saying goes, of the people, by the people and for the people. And what I see instead is a government that will continue to be embarrassed by the demands of the Irish people. I see a government where the interests of an international order will always be prioritised, be that in terms of our neutrality or indeed in terms of immigration policy. And on that basis, I cannot support these nominations. To do so would be a vote for the status quo, and that is what has already brought us to the uncertain place we find ourselves in today. Garv Market.
Harry Nua, I want to wish you well, and I want to thank you also, like Deputy Nolan, in your role as Higher Education Minister. Thank you for your work on Susie and different issues and the apprenticeships, and I acknowledge that, unlike what I did this morning about your abysmal time in health. Recently, it's not just Fine Gael that has been far too left for far too long. In my opinion, all three government parties and most of the opposition occupy that left-wing space, even though it's the private sector that generates our national income and wealth, and even though 80% of employees work in the private sector. You would never guess that listening to the Irish public debate. In recent decades, we have seen the growth of influence of ministerial media advisers and alumni for young wings of our political parties. The government are spending over 7 million of taxpayers' money on these advisers this year. This result in glib sound bites have risen in importance while delivering bread and butter solutions. Has been failing and declined. The recent referendums illustrated the rise of soundbites and the decline of substance. And an example of that decline of substance was that the pro-referendum campaigns actively misrepresented the legal advice that the government had received. This government's main efforts over the last few years have been to distract the public from its substantial failures on housing, health, crime, immigration. But these failures are visible, consistent and undeniable. Our leaders appear important, which might explain why so many of them, at least 11 Fine Gael TDs, are unwilling to put their names before the re-election. But nothing is changing, because the first thing the new Taoiseach does, before even taking up the reins, is to surround himself with media advisers with the single aim of distracting rather than serving the public, as the cycle of failure and mistruths continues. Simon's World. Under the government, we have more asylum seekers and fewer Gardaí to patrol our streets. For anyone who heard Simon Taoiseach Harris now speech in Galway last weekend, you would be left wondering if he lives in the same world as the rest of us. In Simon's world, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but in Simon's world, things can only get better. In Simon's world, crime is down. In Simon's world, taxes are low. In Simon's world, the buses run on time. But people don't live in Simon's world. They live in the real world, Taoiseach, and you'll be devilled by your daily failures of Simon's government. The ongoing immigration crisis is a direct consequence of government policy failures. Minister O'Gorman's unfulfilled promises to provide proper accommodation and abolish direct provision have only worsened the situation. We're witnessing young people being forced to go abroad on a daily basis, and that's not right, and that's not good for Simon's world or our world.
Taoiseach, first of all, I want to warmly congratulate you and your family and the new ministers. I also want to wish the outgoing Taoiseach every happiness and success, and also a special word to Simon Coveney. I wish him good luck and I thank him for everything. I want to be the first person to invite you to County Kerry. And I want you to come very soon, as you have been a very good visitor in the past in your different roles. I invite you to meet with the farmers and the small business people in Kerry at the earliest opportunity. Earlier on this evening, I went to your office, to your new office, and I hand-delivered a letter with regard to the WRC bid, which hinges on funding after the event consent approval. This is for the World Rally Championship, where we're looking to secure a 3-year contract for Waterford, Kerry and Limerick. I was glad to meet with Minister Martin, who I would be very appreciative of her support for this, and I know that she's very open to all of this. And I'm glad that Minister McGrath and Minister Pascal O'Donoghue who are here, because he hold the purse strings. And you're good men to mine money, and I'm telling you the amount of money we're going to have to spend is very little, because what we're going to get back is 350 million. And that's a big win for Ireland. And I'm really asking, you're the right team now there sitting in front of me, and I'm asking you, please fund the World Rally Championship and bring it to Kerry, bring it to Waterford and bring it to Limerick. I want you to stop the attack on Airbnbs and short-term lets. And I really mean this. From the point of view of as a person, I don't do that very short-term lets myself, but I know plenty of people in Kerry who do, and they're asking me to lobby. It doesn't make sense. You won't be able to stop people of doing short-term and turn them into long-term. They'll leave the properties empty first. With regard to the father scheme, what's after being announced isn't enough. It's not good enough. And the rates and the input costs that are on small businesses, they're forcing small businesses to close. And I'm asking you to please do something about that. And also GPs and A&Es, please do your best to help in that situation.
Taoiseach, I'm delighted for you. I wish you well in your position, and the other ministers that have been elevated into positions. Once upon a time, Fine Gael were known as a farmers' party. Fianna Fáil were known as the workers' party, but it is no more. It is very shocking for the people that were members of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael to see the way that you have gone since you actually joined the Green Party, and that you have forgotten the people that put you here in the first place. Once upon a time there was a leader from Cork, and now Independent Ireland has a leader from Cork, and the General Secretary is from Limerick. It's like his history is repeating itself. I'm here this evening to ask you, as a member of the Limerick Motor Club, and a rally person myself, that 300 million of investment into this country they're looking for. On all you have to spend is 5 million a year for a 95 million return. You spent 20 million on 2 referendums, which you got completely wrong, with no return. And the World Rally Championship, if it comes to Limerick, supports Clare, supports Limerick, supports Tipperary, supports Kerry.
That's what it's about. And all your TDs and ministers came to meetings in Waterford and in Kerry saying, oh, we're supporting it. And Minister Burns is holding it on a knife edge at the moment, and we don't know whether we're going to get it or not. And there's 300 million coming into this country if you just give the investment to them today. If you don't, every one of your party will be held accountable for giving the promises that you've given in the past. And all the rally people in Ireland will hold you responsible for an investment into this country of 300 million. So, Minister and Taoiseach, I'm asking you for the investment. 15th is the date, and if they don't get their investment, you will hear about it in the doors. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
10 seconds.
All right, sure, that's what's left to me. Taoiseach, I too want to wish you well for the sake of the people of the country in your role as Taoiseach. I wish you well for that. But I can't forget the nasty answer you gave me on behalf of the people of Killarney, and they won't forget it either a few months ago. I hope you'll take a different line when we're answering questions in the future. I have very little time. I want to ask the government, Taoiseach and the government, to do more for the farmers. This supposed help to transport bales from more than 75 kilometres, that's of no use. I'm asking you to give the farmers vouchers. No farmer are travelling more than 75 kilometres. Be real about it, Minister. You need to do something constructive to help them. They need to get vouchers. And please ease off on them. Instead, help them to continue producing food, and don't annihilate them like you've already done to the fishing industry. Because we do need food. We will always continue to need food. And I'm asking you one special request. Please restore the funding for the mastectomy bras for those women who lost their breasts. And he is squandering money left, right and centre. £2.5 billion already spent on migrants and asylum seekers, and billions spent in the name of climate actions. 600 million for a road in the 6 counties, and no funding for the road from Blackwater to Sneem. Be real about it. See after our own people.
Thank you very much. Now, we go to the independent group. Deputy Thomas Pringle is leading off and sharing with his colleagues.
Yeah, I'm sharing with Deputy Harkin, McNamara and Fitzmaurice.
It's up to yourself.
And I've taken 5 minutes myself. Cancórla, I want to start off by offering a personal congratulations to Simon Harris. On a personal level, it is positive for him and his family to be made Taoiseach. But sadly, for the country and the ordinary people, it is a nothing day. It is a day of lost opportunity. There is no doubt that Simon Harris will not change the focus of this government, and that is the problem with this appointment. I want to take the opportunity also to wish Leo Varadkar and Simon Coveney well on a personal level. Unfortunately, it is not possible to separate the personal from the political in this context, and that is the problem overall. After today's speeches, we have another excuse for doing nothing to add to the lexicon of Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil supported by whatever party thinks it can make hay by supporting them. For years, we've been treated to the maxim that it is the permanent government that is at fault, or that we would love to be able to do that, but it is the European policy that won't let us. We can now add to the litany of do-nothing complaints that it is the global mega trends that are responsible for us not being able to sort the housing crisis. The one big positive that comes out of this that will show once and for all that no matter who leads Fine Gael or Fianna Fáil, it will not change how this country is run. And that is the problem. We need, as in the people of Ireland, is a change in direction of government where the emphasis is on looking after those that need it, putting citizens first, not developers or businesses. That, in my mind, is a simple change of emphasis that would make a huge difference for people across the board. I don't believe that Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael are capable of doing that. The one thing about this government is that it categorically has shown once and for all that there is no substantial difference between Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil. That is something that needed to happen. For too long, the people were conned into thinking that there was a difference, that if they changed the government for one or other of them, there would be a change in policy or direction. Now we can see that changing the leader will make no difference either, and for that I thank you, Taoiseach Harris. The nomination of members of government shows nothing new, and I'm writing a speech before I know who they are, and just that we are merely rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic that is this government. We also have a man who is an utter failure as Minister for Health that brought down the last government and is now leading the country, so it is onwards and upwards for Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, but sadly it will be the ordinary citizens that will suffer. There are so many issues that need to be sorted out. Housing, including the defective block crisis that will affect so many more homes, health services, homelessness, neutrality, childcare and education, that all affect the cost of living, which is a major crisis for the citizens. And we also had the Fianna Fáil leader who has indicated his willingness to recognise the state of Palestine, but gave no commitment on a date and nothing else like that, just said that he's willing to do it. That's a big consolation. We'll see by the election time whether that has actually happened. One example will show, I think, how this government is benefiting businesses rather than citizens. The auto-enrolment pension scheme that the Deputy Leader of Fine Gael is leading will hand millions to private pension companies, leaving workers in the lurch, but giving huge handouts to the companies. The Minister has refused to look at a proposal that would lead to greater rewards for workers, guaranteeing them pensions on retirement that are 53% of earnings rather than the private sector proposal of 22% of earnings, with a retirement lump sum that is 144% of the private scheme for a 25-year-old worker today when they retire. But then that won't benefit pension companies and brokers, so this government doesn't want to know. That's not the fault of the permanent government, Europe or the global megatrends. It is squarely the fault of Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and the Greens. And that is the problem with a government that is not responsive to citizens, and that can be traced in every place that the government operates. We need a government that does not look for excuses and will look after citizens and provide services for them, and everything else will look after itself. Thanks.
Deputy Fitzmaurice, is it? No, Deputy Harkin.
Thank you. Just 2.5 minutes each, Count Corla. Taoiseach, first of all, I want to say that I wish you well in your new role, and I do recognise your genuine collaboration and work on the incorporation of St Angela's into the ATU. I appreciate all of that, Taoiseach. However, this morning I laid bare the failure of this and previous governments to deliver for the North West. And unfortunately, that was only the start of it. My time is short and I can still only cover a few areas. But Taoiseach, in their country report on Ireland for 2023, the European Commission stated that internal regional disparities remained high in Ireland. And an example of this that they quoted is that the disposable income per head of population in the northern and western region was at just 76% of the EU average. Taoiseach, back in 2010, it was at 92% of the EU average. So we're going backwards compared to European regions and other regions in Ireland. The EU's Regional Competitive Index for 2022 found again that the Northern and Western region was the only region in Ireland that was below the EU 27 average in terms of competitiveness. Now, Taoiseach, the reason I quote all these figures is because I want to make it crystal clear to you that this isn't just my opinion or some kind of political charge. These are the facts, and they are the outcome of government action or mostly government inaction. Taoiseach, small businesses urgently need your support. And businesses, particularly along the border region, have exceptional difficulties, and I'm asking you to do what you can to support them. I also want you to listen to our farmers, to work with them, because they are the backbone of the rural economy. And can I finally say, Taoiseach, that I have failed, despite many efforts and quoting statistics blindly, to convince the two previous Taoiseach of the urgent need for policy change when it comes to systemically delivering on balanced regional development. I am now asking you, as the current Taoiseach, to listen and to act.
Deputy Fitzgerald.
First of all, Taoiseach, I want to wish you well. As I said earlier, it's not a personal thing or anything, but I couldn't support government with some of the policies that's been ensued. I would ask you to hit the ground running. And when you hit the ground running, the first place you might go before you go to Kerry is to Roscommon, to where Lochfinchina, where people, and we're getting word this evening that actually the village near it now, the water is rising towards it. This is an emergency. This, in fairness to Patrick O'Donovan, and I wish him well in his new ministry, and to Peter Burke and to all the ministers, but especially those who have gone forward. He has tried to do his best, but this is going to take a Taoiseach, a Taoiseach, and the leader of the Green Party to come with a document in here with legislation, because this is critical. And I'm not saying that Deputy Naughton, everything he said is correct. Everything Deputy Curran says, this is us as representatives in that area, and there are elderly people where the water when they look out is higher than where the journalist sits and they're within in their kitchen. That's the facts. And that's no lies. Another house was lost. Pumps are going around 2 more houses today. This is critical. This isn't us coming into the Dáil just to be popular. And I would ask you, if it's the first thing you do, that those people are sorted. It's a designated area where it is. The designation is dying on its feet, and the Minister, I think, there will actually agree with me what I'm saying. It's there for anyone to see. You don't have to be a scientist. I would ask you to look at that. In relation to the nature restoration law, there is a pushback in Europe, and I would ask you to look at that as Taoiseach. I know that the Green ministers are looking and saying that we needed to bring it in. But why is the Dutch going against it? Why is the Polish going against it? Why is it held up? It's gone through the Parliament, but countries have now found out the consequences of it. We have flooding in Roscommon. My God, if this goes through in parts of the west of Ireland, we are in real trouble. This isn't alarmist. This is because we're from the soil, we live on the soil, and we know the consequences of what can happen. And I am asking you to please look at that. I wish you the best of luck. I wish all your ministers the best of luck. The other thing that needs to be done on the agricultural sector of this farmer bashing needs to stop. You know this is a derogation. I want to make McNamara talk because...
Taoiseach, I've already outlined why I can't support you. I've given some reasons. There are many others. But I had the pleasure of meeting your father outside. I had the pleasure of hearing your son here today in the chamber. On a personal level, Taoiseach, I wish you, your family and your government the very best of luck in the future.
Thank you, Deputy McNamara. Now, Deputy Violet Ann Wynne, please.
I also want to echo and congratulate the new Taoiseach on your position, and also to echo the comments in relation to your kids. It was really positive and great experience to have them here in the chamber on this particular day. I also want to wish the newly appointed ministers well in their new departments. I want to congratulate Minister Naughton on her appointment to Minister of State specifically for special education, and also to acknowledge the Minister's continued role as Chief Whip. I know that it has been significant for myself in terms of being able to secure the first time ever 2-minute non-aligned speaking time. That has been instrumental for me to be able to ensure that I get to raise the important issues and matters that affect my constituents, and for that I am grateful. I also want to acknowledge the consistent civility that you demonstrated to myself in that role. I look forward to working with you for the benefit of my constituents, and with that in mind I want to point to the serious urgency for forward planning for secondary school places in Clare. I know that Ennis has significant issues, as West Clare does too, because a number of primary school special classes does not actually tally with the places that are there now in our secondary schools. As a parent of a child with additional needs, it is incredibly unsettling when I'm told of parents who do not know where their child is going to go or be able to secure a secondary school place. I would ask that this be a priority, Minister, as we know that it is important, and it has been said by the Taoiseach, and I think it's important that the Taoiseach has specified inclusivity and access Can I also point to the need for training and awareness programmes to be rolled out to all schools, and for that to include all staff members? It is also really important and positive to hear that there is a commitment to ensure that the Minister for Social Protection will look at the means-tested payment for carers to ensure more receive the payment. I want to see the full abolishment of means testing, and I hope that a plan will be delivered shortly to make that a reality. For far too long, our carers who do one of the most difficult jobs and at the same time save the state have not been recognised fully. I'll leave it there, Gurmagh.
The question is that Dáil Éireann approves the nominations by the Taoiseach for appointment by the President to be members of the Government. Is that agreed? The Chakti Atar Havna Tarish Ganabradis Ta. She'd chew the Tana Gainabradis Nail. Solim Gulling Kesh Richa. Votal.
Will members please take their designated seats? Designated seats, members, please. Nomination by the Taoiseach for appointment by the President to be members of the Government. The question is that Dáil Éireann approves the nominations by the Taoiseach for appointment by the President to be members of the Government, and on that question a division has been challenged. Tellers Thaw, Minister Hildegard Naughton and Deputy Cormac Devlin, Neil, Deputy Pádraig McLaughlin and Deputy Matty McGrath.
Deputy James Brown. Deputy Mary Butler. Deputy Thomas Byrne. Deputy Jackie Cahill. Deputy Dara Calleary. Deputy Jack Chambers. Deputy Niall Collins. Deputy Barry Cowan. Deputy Cathal Crowe. Deputy Cormac Devlin. Deputy Stephen Donnelly. Deputy Joe Flaherty. Deputy Sean Fleming. Deputy Norma Foley. Deputy Sean Haughey. Deputy John Lahart. Deputy James Lawless. Deputy Micheál Martin. Deputy Paul McAuliffe. Deputy Charlie McConalogue. Deputy Michael McGrath. Deputy John McGuinness. Deputy Andreas Moynihan. Deputy Michael Moynihan. Deputy Jennifer Murnan O'Connor. Deputy Eamon O'Keefe. Deputy Dara O'Brien. Deputy Jim O'Callaghan. Deputy James O'Connor. Deputy Willie O'Dea. Deputy Christopher O'Sullivan. Deputy Pádraig O'Sullivan. Deputy Anne Rabbitt. Deputy Brendan Smith. Deputy Niamh Smith. Deputy Robert Troy. Deputy Colin Brophy. Deputy Richard Bruton. Deputy Colin Burke. Deputy Peter Burke. Deputy Kieran Cannon. Deputy Joe Carey. Deputy Jennifer Carroll McNeil. Deputy Simon Coveney. Deputy Michael Creed. Deputy Alan Dillon. Deputy Pascal Donoghue. Deputy Bernard Durkin. Deputy Damien English. Deputy Alan Farrell. Deputy Frankie Feehan. Deputy Charles Flanagan. Deputy Brendan Griffin. On Taoiseach. Deputy Martin Hayden. Deputy Emer Higgins. Deputy Heather Humphreys. Deputy Paul Keogh. Deputy Josepha Madigan. Deputy Helen McEntee. Deputy Joe McHugh. Deputy Hildegard Naughton. Deputy Kieran O'Donnell. Deputy Patrick O'Donovan. Deputy Fergus O'Dowd. Deputy John Paul Phelan. Deputy Neil Richmond. Deputy Michael Rain. Deputy David Stanton. Deputy Leo Varadkar. Deputy Patrick Costello. Deputy Francis Noel Duffy. Deputy Nessa Horrigan. Deputy Brian Ledden. Deputy Catherine Martin. Deputy Stephen Matthews. Deputy Malcolm Noonan. Deputy Mark O'Cahisick. Deputy Joe Bryan. Deputy Roderick O'Gorman. Deputy Eamon Ryan. Deputy Oisin Smith. Deputy Chris Andrews. Deputy John Brady. Deputy Martin Brown. Deputy Pat Buckley. Deputy Matt Carthy. Deputy Circa Clark. Deputy Rose Conway Walsh. Deputy Rada Cronin. Deputy Sean Crowe. Deputy David Cullinan. Deputy Pa Daly. Deputy Pierce Doherty. Deputy Paul Donnelly. Deputy Desi Ellis. Deputy Mairead Farrell. Deputy Kathleen Funchion. Deputy Thomas Gould. Deputy Johnny Quirk. Deputy Martin Kenny. Deputy Claire Curran. Deputy Pádraig McLaughlin. Deputy Mary Lou MacDonald. Deputy Denise Mitchell. Deputy Imelda Munster. Deputy Johnny Mythen. Deputy Owen O'Brien. Deputy Donnacha O'Leary. Deputy Rory O'Murraku. Deputy Angus O'Snuddig. Deputy Louise O'Reilly. Deputy Darren O'Rourke. Deputy Maurice Quinlivan. Deputy Patricia Ryan. Deputy Brian Stanley. Deputy Pauline Tully. Deputy Mark Ward. Deputy Ivana Bashik. Deputy Brendan Howland. Deputy Alan Kelly. Deputy Jed Nash. Deputy Aon O'Riordan. Deputy Sean Sherlock. Deputy Duncan Smith. Deputy Holly Kearns. Deputy Gary Gannon. Deputy Catherine Murphy. Deputy Keane O'Callaghan. Deputy Roisin Shortall. Deputy Jennifer Whitmore. Deputy Mick Barry. Deputy Richard Boyd Barrett. Deputy Gino Kenny. Deputy Paul Murphy. Deputy Braid Smith. Deputy Cathal Berry. Deputy Sean Canny. Deputy Peter Fitzpatrick. Deputy Noel Grealish. Deputy Michael Lowry. Deputy Verona Murphy. Deputy Dennis Naughton. Deputy Matt Shanahan. Deputy Peadar Tobin. Deputy Michael Collins. Deputy Danny Healy-Ray. Deputy Michael Healy-Ray. Deputy Matty McGrath. Deputy Carol Nolan. Deputy Richard O'Donoghue. Deputy Joan Collins. Deputy Catherine Connolly. Deputy Michael Fitzmaurice. Deputy Marion Harkin. Deputy Michael McNamara. Deputy Thomas Pringle. Deputy Mark McSharry. Deputy Violet Ann Wynne.
Okay, sé tar an bhótáil sin ná tá 8-7. Níl 68. Tá an ceist tríte, tá gnó an le aniu tá go condéire agus seaan an dáil ar athló go dtí a dó clog tróna mark an 10 lá